So the International Monetary Fund's 2022 economic outlook says that the biggest threats to African economies this year will be the Covid-19 pandemic and the accelerating pace of climate change. Now, that report goes on to say that both issues underscore the need for increased global cooperation and dialogue. Let's talk more about this then with Ubuntunomics Director and co-host Sbunyati Sbu. A very good evening to you. Welcome to the program. Not surprising then, these notes from the IMF when you consider just the devastation economically suffered by people right here in South Africa.
Hi, and greetings to all your viewers. South Africa is actually suffering many more pandemics. I mean, we're talking about things like racism, inequality in the country. We've got migration and refugee problems. We've got the financialization of the economy, which is not yielding any jobs. So we've got a myriad of problems in the country, yes.
I'm looking at the forecast here. The IMF says it expects economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa of 3.7% in 2021, 3.8% for the year thereafter. I wonder how much of a difference that will make in real terms for the people who have, in some cases, gone from the middle class to being poor, and the poor who've got poorer.
South Africa, it has been said before that we need to be growing at something more than 5% to get any benefits from economic growth. And that economic growth has got to be grounded on the ability to create not job opportunities only, but jobs in the same time as the economy is growing. Because it helps no one to have an economy that's growing with a population that's getting poorer. So we need to change this current paradigm we are in, because the Washington consensus, which we are married to, which is your free market neoliberalism, is a model that is bound to fail, because money always goes towards the 10% or the 1% who owns the capital and means of production, whereas the rest is left in dire poverty. Yeah.
Despite all of those problems, the IMF says that Africa, or sub-Saharan Africa's potential, is undiminished, but it also says we're at a crucial point for bold, transformative reforms. It's not a new conversation on the continent, but is there the leadership appetite, the ability to see through those reforms, and what might they be?
Basically, what we have in South Africa and in the continent is a wrong economic philosophy. When we're talking about economic restructuring, we're mainly talking about doing away with labor laws. We're talking about small stuff like making sure that your networks work, making sure that you've got your ICT works. Those things are good, but in and of themselves are not what is needed in Africa. What is needed in South Africa is a shift on the macroeconomic framework. What I mean by that is that we've got these self-imposed restrictions, because South Africa has copied a lot of what Europe does. In Europe, they had the Maastricht Treaty, which set the debt levels at 60% and budget deficits at something like 5%. Now, South Africa needs to stimulate demand in the economy. And if you want to do that, you need to spend more money in the economy to build your infrastructure. Basically, be on a war path. Africa needs an economic war to tackle all of these problems, these big problems that we have, because the state needs to step in and do things like a job guarantee program, wherein the state guarantees all people who are willing to work a job. And things like building this infrastructure that we've been talking about for all of these years. I mean, in water alone, there's a deficit of about R1 trillion. Our infrastructure is fraught. We saw during the local government elections how people were complaining about sanitation, how cities like Gqeberha don't have water. There's a lot that we could do, but that would mean that our debt in relation to GDP rises. Currently, we're at something like 70%, but that can go up to about 100% or even more. Mm-hmm. There's no problem in South Africa concerning debt. Our problem is that we have an economy that doesn't absorb the labor force that we have. For an example, Tendegile, in Kenya, they set their GDP debt ratios at 100%. Now, South Africa is a much bigger economy than Kenya, but they can do that. So most of these things are philosophical and outdated theories that people like our former finance minister, Tito Mboweni, advocated for, and people like our governor is advocating for. He doesn't want to step in and try to do something on the monetary front. So we've got those macro problems. But when people talk, they talk about all the little stuff, and they're talking about taking away things like labor laws, which guarantee that our labor force is not.
So, Sbu, we're talking tonight because we're speaking in the context of a report by the International Monetary Fund. The biggest fear, especially for continents such as Africa and other parts of the world that are developing, is about a return or a deepening dependency on IMF loans and that sort of funding. Are we treading closer to that as a result of the pandemic, or are we still safe?
The pandemic, not itself, the pandemic itself, COVID, the health problem, is not as much as of a factor as in other continents, because you remember that Africa, on a percentage-wise, Africans have not been dying or have not been getting as sick as people like the US or Europe. So what has been hampering Africa are all these lockdowns, which make which close them, which shut down our economies. And so to get back to your question, we do have a problem in terms of a debt crisis continental-wide. I mean, a few weeks ago, Zambia went to the IMF, to the very same IMF, to ask for a $1.4 billion bailout. And countries like Rwanda are highly indebted. Ethiopia is highly indebted. Nigeria, highly indebted. So we need either financiers, such as the New Development Bank of the BRICS, to accommodate more of these African countries, accommodate our developmental goals, and finance some of these projects that are long withstanding.
So, Sbu, as a final question, in 30 seconds if you can, are African countries scapegoating the pandemic for what were already pre-existing problems economically?
Yes. A simple answer is yes, most especially South Africa. The South African economy has been shrinking since 2017. So we have not had growth since way back in 2013 or something like that. So most of our economies, and these economies are economies jumping from a very low base. And so you would expect that they will be growing at something like 10%, which Ethiopia managed to do over the past decade. So most of these countries are saying, no, it's the COVID, whatnot. But it is not. We just scapegoating.
I said 30 seconds and you stuck to it. Sbu Nyati, thankful for your time tonight. Sbu is with Ubuntunomics, where he is director and co-host, speaking to us about this latest report from the IMF looking at African sub-Saharan economies in a post-pandemic, well, not even a post-pandemic world, because we're still very much stuck in a world that is afflicted with COVID-19.